If you have struggled to start up your own business, even though you know everything you need to know to get started with the business, I think this video is going to be for you, because there's too many of us out there who are stuck in work that we don't like, who are struggling to make things happen. And most of it is internal. We have a great business idea and we just can't take action around it. This video, hopefully by the end of it, you will have some ideas, maybe a story, a different way of looking at the world that'll get you started. It'll help you actually take action. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. Starting a business should have been super easy for me. I went to business school. I actually worked at startups. I've actually worked with different small businesses. I've done consulting work for small businesses. And yet for me, getting started and taking action was really, really difficult. In fact, I remember even in business school, I would take these venture creation, entrepreneurship types of courses. And if there was just like a research to do to, here's what a great business would look like, I would be all over it and I would be excellent at it. And I would like write it all out and present it and even be able to do these mock pitches really well. But when it came down to actually starting my own business, I really, really struggled. And I didn't quite know why this was happening. Because by theory, I knew everything. I was reading all these startup books, these entrepreneurship books, but I think there's an internal factor. There's a more energetic factor towards starting your own business that no one really talks about. There's a real internal story that's going on in our head that's preventing us from taking action. And so today I want to talk to you about a few of them. I've written some of them down. I think the first idea that I really had to overcome is this idea that the work that I'm doing, this business that I want to start, isn't significant enough. I think a lot of us are shooting ourselves in the foot by thinking, well, who am I to write an ebook, right? Like, who cares? Just an ebook about whatever it is. Maybe it's weight loss. Maybe it's something to do with cooking. Maybe it's about something technical in your own field. And you might think to yourself, well, who am I to actually just go out there and write an ebook? There are like millions of ebooks out there. What is my ebook going to do? What is my little service in my town going to do? And I think this is such a limiting way of thinking, because people really want to hear your story. People really want to connect with you. The point of the business is not the actual like product and service that you're providing. Of course, you have to provide that. But I think the real task here is providing yourself. Like, are you putting your energy? And people really want to connect with your energy. And I'm finding that out. I'll give you a very simple example. A business venture that I was thinking of starting, and something that I'm kind of noodling on and actually taking steps towards building, is helping people move to the city of Dallas. Now, I've lived here for 5 years now, and I've been to every part of this city. And I didn't think that helping people with something like that is something that's significant. And yet just this past week, I met 2 or 3 different couples, 2 or 3 different families who were struggling to do that. They had just moved here and they'd made some bad decisions. They were in places that had cockroaches. They were in places that didn't really have any green space. They have a family, but it's very far away from their work. And all of these sorts of things are happening. And they spent a lot of money making the wrong decision, right? They were just sort of guiding themselves. They might have even worked with locators or real estate agents to figure out like where to rent their first place. But these agents, they were in it for a volume business. They were just sort of like, sending you a list of 40 different places. You're just Googling stuff out and you're, crossing your fingers and hoping it's going to be a good decision. And in just an hour's worth of talk with all these different people, I was astounded by the difference I was able to make for something as simple as like, hey, you're moving to Dallas, cool. Like, here are all the places that you should be looking at. Here's what to look for in a property. Here's what not to look for in a property. And it changed them, right? And like, this is not an insignificant amount of knowledge. I was able to connect with them. I was able to relate to them. I was able to share my experiences with them and then ask them a lot of questions about, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And what do you care about in this sort of situation? And just helping them figure this out. And the look that they gave me, this deep appreciation and gratitude that they expressed to me, told me that, there's something actually here. This might seem completely insignificant, but it's actually incredibly significant. And I've written ebooks, I've made courses online, and I've used different like pseudonyms to do it. And people to this day email me and send me thank you notes saying like, thank you for writing this. It completely changed my life, or it really helped me figure this one small piece of my life out. And so I think like if you are feeling that what you have to offer is not significant enough, and that's why you can't get into action, and you think you're just going to be one of like 500 different people who are doing the exact same thing, get out of your own head and actually think about how you can help other people, because your story, your energy, your presence is what people are really looking forward to. So show up and actually share that, because I think it's going to make a huge difference. The other thing that a lot of people sort of tell me is that, well, marketing feels really weird. It feels kind of like scummy. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel good. And I am fully with you, right? So I've spent so many years doing marketing, business development, sales work. I've worked for so many different companies, done consulting work, done coaching work for all that stuff. And yet even for me, when it comes time to sort of selling my own self, selling my own services, think about just updating your LinkedIn bio, right? There's a lot of resistance that comes up for me. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do this. I feel kind of weird, doing all that kind of stuff putting myself out there, because there's a part of me that feels there's like an imposter syndrome going on. That again, it's sort of back to the first point where it says, well, who am I to do this? Who am I to actually put this kind of put myself out there, right? Like I'm just a one-man shop. I'm kind of a phony, right? Like, am I actually going to be considered seriously? And I think something that's helping me change my perspective on marketing is sharing myself even more openly. Well, I know this seems kind of contradictory because you might think, well, if you're uncomfortable sharing even a little bit about yourself, about your business, what you're doing, how are you going to share even more of yourself? And I think this is very counterintuitive, but hear me out. I think when you share yourself more openly, when you share more of your life with people, people know what they're getting, right? They end up seeing you more as a human being. They're not expecting the kind of work that they might get from a large corporation like a Verizon or AT&T or something like that. They know that they're going to only be dealing with you, like a solo person, a solopreneur. And that makes a huge difference, right? Because their expectations are different. Their expectations are not worse, because that's the binary decision we end up thinking of, right? That, oh, it's either going to be excellent or it's going to be terrible. And like, I don't want to be worse. I need to make things perfect. And that's the only way to make it happen. And I think you showing up and sharing your humanity, sharing your stories, sharing your edges makes people change their expectations, not for worse or better. I think they change their expectations for more in terms of you. They want more of your presence. They want more of connection with you. And that's a wonderful thing to lean into. So don't let the idea of marketing kind of stop you from starting your business. Like, be vulnerable, be open. And I think people will be really interested in doing that and connecting with you and buying from you. The other thing that gets us in the way is this idea of and it's kind of sort of tied to the previous point about, the expectations that people have of big business versus small business. And this tendency we have as perfectionists. Here's, point number 3. Perfectionism is such a limiting factor for us because we want everything to be perfect. We want the landing page to look perfect. We want our service to look perfect. We want every single click and thing to just be perfect. And I've met a lot of people in the corporate world who will obsess over these insane details. And I think these are the 20% of details that take up 80% of your time, but they don't really give you any payback. They don't really give you any payoff. I think what I've learned that the whole philosophy of all this business is just help people. Just help people. That's all it is, right? Marketing is just about helping people. This idea of significance is just about, well, you know what? Forget it. I'm helping someone, and that is enough. That's enough of a reason for me to show up and help people, to start this business. And so this idea of wanting to build a perfect product, no, it doesn't really matter. Just think about what is the 20% of stuff you can do that'll give people 80% of the value. Because if you really think about it, you don't need to be 100% perfect. You don't need to be the expert. You just need to be good enough at helping people unlock just that amount of value that gives them what they want. So stop thinking about perfection and just get into the action of creating and helping people. If there's one thing that you should take away from this video today, is just help people. And I think if you just do that, you've got an incredible business. Just help people. As a solopreneur, you're going to do great. Just help people. I think the next reason is a lot of the business lingo, the language that we use around business, right? So when it comes to sales, I come from a sales background. We use words like targets. We use words like prospects and this very militaristic kind of language. We use words like charge. I'm going to charge this person. Like, you're going to give them a shock and you're going to freeze or whatever, the electric shock. I think the language of business is really broken. And I'm going to make different videos in the future about this idea of we need to change the business vocabulary completely. We need a different grammar, a different vocabulary, a different spelling, a different everything of business, because the story of business, the way business has been done in the past, isn't working. We need a different way of doing things. And so, if the word business is too heavy for you, then make it just a project. And that's something that I'm leaning into a lot more. I don't like the idea of I am a business. Because it's tied to your identity, right? Like, if people ask you, what do you do, right? And that's the North American question everyone asks you. What do you do? And so our identity is tied so deeply to what it is that we do, and that makes it so difficult for us to get into action. And so this idea that I'm leaning into is, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I am someone who builds a project, and I build it, and then I put it out there, and I hope it helps people. And then I move on to the next thing. And of course, I'm using all the great thinking that I can to make it validate the business and all that kind of stuff. But I'm treating it as a project. I'm not tying my identity to it. I am not a real estate agent. I am not an author. I am not a this. I'm not a podcaster. I'm a guy who just creates new, and I'm not a YouTuber. I'm just a guy who creates one project after another, after another, after another. And this mindset shift has been enormous for me because it has removed so much mental baggage of picking and being stuck on one identity. If you have a lot of ideas, if you have someone who's been wanting to try multiple different things, this identity shift is so important. Just get out of this idea that I am starting a business, right? This big, formal, heavy thing. And instead, just lower the expectations and say, I'm going to create this project and see how it goes. And shifting your vision from business to project is one way of doing it. We can talk a lot more about sales. We can talk more about, all the different language that we use to talk about business, and like find a different version of it. We can find a different grammar for it. I'd love to know, if you're stuck on some of these things, leave a comment below. I'd love to know kind of what words, what aspects of business really keep you stuck, and I'd love to help you kind of overcome that, and maybe you'll help me overcome some things as well. So share that along. And I think the final aspect of all of this is this idea of like money as like a motivator. I think when we're starting out a business, we tend to become so obsessed with the money factor, right? Like we're optimizing and creating all these funnels to try and extract the most value. We're creating all these like value ladders and all those sorts of things that you might have heard about. Russell Brunson talks about this a lot. A lot of the direct marketers talk about this kind of stuff a lot. But I think like making and going into a business or starting a project for the sake of money can be very, very limiting. And there's a really interesting book about this called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Cohen. I'll put a link on that in the description below. And he makes a really interesting case that the more extrinsic rewards that are put in front of us, that are dangled in front of us, the less motivated we actually become to stick with something. And this is such an interesting point because almost all of the world out there is obsessed with this extrinsic motivation. This extrinsic means something that's outside of us. It's not something that we actually look at, we enjoy for the sake of it, but we're doing it for the sake of like getting something. So in school, it might be you don't really care about math, you don't really care about history. You just want the grade so you can go to college, right? So the intrinsic motivation would be, I really care about history, I really care about math. The extrinsic part would be, I just care about the grade. And we know that even from education, that people who are driven just by extrinsic rewards, once they get their grade, they're not really reading another book about history. They're not really reading they're not really kind of like learning about math. They're just sort of, one and done with it. And this has been like a big factor for me. Every time I would, try and think about a business venture, I would get really focused on like, well, what's the math? What's the monetary kind of like equation out there that's going to make this work? And I would be so obsessed with that. And I made videos in the past about like what that does to you in terms of scarcity thinking, that, oh, like this is not going to work. This is all going to be terrible. But this type of obsession with money, figuring out the money factor, puts you in an extrinsically motivated mindset, and you can't get into action. You can't actually be motivated enough. And the research actually tells you that you can't have both. You can't have intrinsic and extrinsic. You can't be like, well, it'll be nice to be really interested in history, and like, by the way, you need to get a great grade on your history paper. No, it has to be just, I'm deeply interested in history, because even having an extrinsic thing actually reduces your intrinsic motivation. So if there's even an element of extrinsic, or internal motivation goes down. And so again, I think if you just focus on helping people, just help people in a way that feels good to you, solving a problem that feels right to you, solving a problem that you have overcome yourself, you're going to do much, much better to actually getting started, right? So forget the extrinsic stuff. Just make sure that you can cover your base, you can cover your expenses. And I think we live in an incredible time that as a solopreneur, as a bootstrapper, we don't need much. All we need is a domain, maybe a $10 worth of thing, and we can start creating. It's so simple, it's so easy. So get out of your head, don't worry, don't think about all of those other sorts of things, but just start creating, because the more we remain stuck in our head, we're going to spend more time, more years, more energy, never getting started. And hey, I never was making these videos, right? Because I was so stuck in my head. And the same kind of philosophy started with me, where I just stopped thinking about all that stuff. I just started showing up, and I just want to make these videos to help people. So that's the lesson for today. Just go out there and help people. There's nothing else you get out of it, and you're going to do great. That's all I got for you today. Thanks.